Letters from Iwo Jima is a war film directed by Clint Eastwood that tells the story of the Battle of Iwo Jima from the Japanese perspective. Instead of focusing on victory or heroism in a traditional sense, the film is mainly concerned with the inner lives of the soldiers who fought on the island and the emotional weight of a battle they were never expected to win. The movie is deeply human and reflective, showing war as an experience shaped by fear, duty, tradition, and personal loss rather than glory. The story is set in 1944 and 1945 as American forces prepare to invade the island of Iwo Jima, a small but strategically important piece of land for Japan. From the beginning, the film makes it clear that the Japanese soldiers understand how desperate their situation is. Supplies are limited, reinforcements are unlikely, and surrender is considered shameful. The island itself feels isolated and unforgiving, reinforcing the idea that the soldiers are trapped by both geography and ideology. One of the central figures in the film is General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the commander of the Japanese forces on Iwo Jima. Unlike many of the officers around him, Kuribayashi is practical and forward-thinking. He has lived in the United States and understands American military strength, which makes him realistic about Japan's chances. Rather than ordering pointless charges, he focuses on defensive strategies such as tunnel systems and hidden positions. His goal is not to win the battle, but to delay the Americans for as long as possible and make the invasion as costly as he can. This approach immediately sets him apart and creates tension between him and other officers who are more rigid in their thinking. Kuribayashi is portrayed as a calm, thoughtful leader who cares deeply about his men. He enforces discipline, but also questions traditions that value death over survival. Throughout the film, he struggles with the expectations placed on him by Japanese military culture, especially the belief that dying for one's country is the highest honor. His internal conflict reflects the larger theme of the film, which examines how cultural values can clash with human instincts. Alongside Kuribayashi, the film follows several ordinary soldiers, including Saigo, a former baker who has been drafted into the army. Saigo represents the average man caught in the machinery of war. He is not particularly brave or ideological, and his main desire is simply to stay alive and return to his family. Through Saigo, the audience experiences the confusion, terror, and exhaustion of combat from a very personal perspective. His fear does not make him weak, but rather makes him relatable. Another important character is Baron Nishi, an officer who was once an Olympic equestrian and who also has experience abroad. Like Kuribayashi, Nishi has a broader view of the world and shows kindness toward his men and even toward wounded American soldiers. His presence further emphasizes the idea that individuals within the Japanese military were not all the same, and that compassion could exist even in extreme circumstances. A major element of the film is the letters written by the soldiers, which give the movie its title. These letters are meant to be messages to loved ones back home, often written with the understanding that they may be the last words the soldiers ever send. The letters reveal private thoughts that the men cannot express openly, such as fear, regret, love, and doubt. They serve as a reminder that behind every uniform is a person with relationships and dreams that extend beyond the battlefield. As the American invasion begins, the film avoids spectacle and instead focuses on chaos and confusion. The battle scenes are intense but restrained, emphasizing noise, darkness, and disorientation rather than heroic imagery. The Japanese soldiers fight from underground tunnels, emerging briefly to attack before retreating again. This style of warfare adds to the sense of desperation and highlights how uneven the conflict is. The Americans have overwhelming firepower, while the Japanese rely on endurance and sacrifice. One of the most powerful aspects of the film is its portrayal of suicide within the Japanese ranks. Many soldiers are taught that surrender is worse than death, and this belief leads to tragic outcomes. The film does not glorify these acts, nor does it judge them harshly. Instead, it presents them as the result of immense pressure, fear, and indoctrination. These moments are quiet and painful, underscoring how war strips people of real choices. The relationship between officers and enlisted men is another key theme. Some officers cling strictly to tradition and demand absolute obedience, even when orders are clearly futile. Others, like Kuribayashi and Nishi, try to adapt and protect their soldiers where possible. This contrast shows the cracks within the Japanese command structure and suggests that blind loyalty can be just as dangerous as the enemy. As the battle drags on, hope steadily fades. Supplies run out, casualties mount, and communication breaks down. The soldiers become increasingly isolated, both physically and emotionally. The film spends a lot of time showing small, quiet moments, such as soldiers sharing food or talking about home. These scenes slow the pace and emphasize the humanity that persists even as conditions worsen. The American soldiers are mostly kept in the background, rarely individualized. This choice reinforces the idea that the film is not about demonizing the enemy or retelling the battle from both sides equally. Instead, the Americans function as an unstoppable force, almost like a natural disaster. This perspective helps the audience understand how the Japanese soldiers experience the invasion as something overwhelming and inevitable. Kurabayashi's eventual fate is handled with restraint and respect. His final actions reflect his sense of responsibility and his refusal to surrender, even as the situation becomes hopeless. At the same time, the film avoids portraying him as a flawless hero. He is shown as a man bound by duty, making difficult choices in an impossible situation. Saigo's journey reaches a quiet but meaningful conclusion. His desire to live, even when it conflicts with everything he has been taught, becomes one of the film's most important statements. Through him, the movie suggests that survival itself can be an act of resistance against a system that values death over life. By the end, Letters from Iwo Jima leaves the audience with a sense of mourning rather than triumph. The battle is not remembered as a turning point or a strategic victory, but as a human tragedy filled with wasted lives. The film challenges traditional war narratives by focusing on loss, misunderstanding, and the cost of ideology. Overall, Letters from Iwo Jima is a quiet, reflective war film that prioritizes empathy over action. It asks viewers to see the enemy not as villains, but as people shaped by culture, obligation, and circumstance. By telling the story from the Japanese side, the film expands the way war is remembered and understood. It does not excuse the actions of the Japanese military during World War II, but it insists on recognizing the humanity of the individuals who fought and died. In doing so, the film becomes less about a single battle and more about the universal suffering caused by war.